But yeah, as you can tell, I spent a lot of effort in this video,
which I'm never doing again.
How's it going, party people? Skydubs here, back again with another legit game review. Today we are completing Skylanders Trap Team on Nightmare Mode. I am so excited. Now I won't do any special intros, let's just start. Skylanders Trap Team was released in October of 2014 and the main developers were Toys for Bob because Activision thought it would be a good idea to change main developers every year so that there could be a game every year, which is stupid because they should have all focused on developing one game, and because of that, we all know what happened with the development of this game. But it's been 8 years, so I don't see the point in complaining a lot. Let's just start the game. But again, you need a new portal, but this time it actually makes sense because of the new trap gimmick. The new thing about Trap Team is that every level has multiple mini boss fights, and there are also actual boss fights, and once you defeat the bosses, who are called the villains, if you put one of these crystals of the required element into your portal, you get a cool animation and voice lines from the villain, and now you can play as the villain. And that's all cool in concept, but honestly, these villains aren't that great. Don't get me wrong, they deal a ton of damage and some of their moves are really good, and they are invincible because they don't have a health bar which is replaced with a timer, but to me, this gimmick doesn't feel like it's really focused on. It just feels like a bonus instead of something the game is based around, because villains do not have a system of upgrading like Skylanders, and there is no leveling up, and most of them only have 2 different moves, and sometimes they have 3 moves, which is very basic. The only upgrades you get are the quests they have, but the quests are probably my least favorite part about the game. Like, yeah, it's great that your villains deal more damage, but the quests are literally just a cutscene that lasts 5 seconds, or even worse, a heroic challenge. I'm not kidding, they didn't even change the area for some of the quests. It's the same as the one for heroic challenges in Skylanders Giants, and while it is kind of nostalgic to see it like remastered with new graphics, I absolutely hate some of these quests, and what pisses me off even more is that once you do them, the colors of the villain change and some look better than before, but most of the designs are appalling. Not to mention the fact they are trying to sell us different traps, as if they do something different, when all the traps from one element act the same way and can trap every single villain from that element, so there is no reason to buy more than one trap for an element. Anyways, let's start the game. Eon introduces us to Skylands, yet again, and we see the Doom Raiders, or like the big bosses that always cause trouble in Skylands, and then the Trap Masters had to fight them, and once they defeated them, they trapped them in a cage made of Traptanium in Cloudcracker Prison, but somebody blew it up, and the Doom Raiders are now free, while the Trap Masters flew to Earth, and the traps were created that way. The explosion also made 2 new elements, which are the light and dark elements. Regular elements have 2 trap masters, 2 cores, and maybe a repose, while light and dark elements have 1 trap master and 1 core, but they also have their own levels, so we will talk about all of that later. The Trap Masters are also kind of the gimmick for this game, as they are the new Skylander team, and they have their Traptanium weapons that are more powerful when fighting villains and can destroy Traptanium crystals to unlock collectibles, and now every Skylander in this game deals a huge amount of damage, and all of the previous Skylanders have been buffed, but the Trap Masters are the most powerful ones. Now, I haven't played with all of them, but some of them like Wildfire, Crypt King, Nightlight and Thunderbolt are all close-range monsters that deal a ton of damage and have huge health bars, and Gearshift is just a female Drobot with a cooler moveset and a bigger health bar. They also look really cool, but the things that annoy me are their weapons. I know everything is made of Traptanium, but it's so lazy to just make a weapon the color of the element and that's it. Like, imagine how cool Crypt King would look with an actual badass sword, or Wildfire with some cool looking shield. And I mean, the weapons don't even glow on the portal, which is very disappointing considering the Giants did that even though they really didn't need to. Also, I said the Trapmasters look really cool, but there is one design I really don't like, and that is Stufflock, who is probably the worst designed Skylander ever. She's just a taller Callie with an Irish accent, and I always think of that video whenever I'm playing as her. But she isn't bad, I still enjoy playing with her, and I also have to say the same with Headrush, and I think she's overhated. She can stun slower enemies, has decent speed, and can turn around whenever you want with her first move, so I don't know why people hate her so much. Obviously, she isn't amazing, but she isn't bad either. As for the cores, nobody cares about them. They literally serve no purpose, and there is no reason for any new cores in this game, since the elemental gates are now only unlocked by Trapmasters, which is another money-grabbing move by Activision, especially since the Trapmasters are very expensive. Also, the minis are now playable for some reason, and there are 16 of them. There is really no reason to use them as well over regular Skylanders, unless you want a smaller hitbox for the giants, but that's it. There are also no light cores here, which is great, and there are 8 new Eons Elites, which are old Skylanders that deal much more damage and have much more health, and I actually like them. There are also a couple of reposes, and the Gilgrunt is the only one who got a Series 4, and that's it for the roster. It's a bit all over the place with good and bad stuff, but I kind of like it and kind of hate it at the same time, but let's start playing the game. Before we start the level, a new character called Buzz is opening the Skylanders Academy, which is our new hub area, and Callie and Hugo are back. Though Hugo is only shown here, so that's a bit weird. They left him out the second game in a row, but right before the opening, something happens at the Soda Festival and we have to go investigate, and wow, the Soda Festival is under an attack by the Gulper, and it's a really promising start. I mean, just imagine fighting a giant boss like this in the first level. Now, as it is the first level, you know, the gameplay, it's the same way as Swap Force. It has jumping again, and Skylanders have free attacks and potentially more attacks on top of that, depending on their moveset. And one thing that is immediately noticeable is that this is definitely a Toys for Bob game, and the charm from SSA and Giants that wasn't present in Swap Force has returned. You can really tell the difference in developers with this game and Swap Force and Superchargers, and I prefer the way this one looks, as it's like Giants with much better graphics. But not all designs are great. The fur on Flynn and Callie is really weird. But anyways, at the start of the level we talk to Buzz, and as always he's a new NPC, so he must have his own catchphrase, but he's special because he has 2 boomsticks and secret ninja commando skills.
Stay sharp, people. My ninja commando senses till.
Yeah, the second one is the annoying one, and I hate this thing that happens with every NPC now, but at least it's not as bad as Tessa's Kablam. This level looks good though, and I like the Soda River, and we get to fight our first villain, who is Sheep Grip. I mean, it's obviously one of the easiest fights, but it's a good way to get introduced to the trapping gimmick. Once you defeat the villain, it will get locked in this cage, and if you have a trap of that element, you put it in the portal and get a cool short cutscene that traps them and you can play as them. Or if you don't have a trap, you can just skip the villain, but you can't play as it, and I must admit, I like the way they made this. First of all, I like how every villain has a wanted poster. It's a pretty nice detail, and you get a bounty once you trap them, and the Sky Stone. And I have to mention that once they are trapped, they start talking through the portal, and when you switch to the villain to play as it, there is a pretty cool sound effect as well. Obviously, sheep creep is a sheep, and it really can say a lot of things, but let's take Chompy Mage as an example.
Hey! What's going on? Where am I?
I also like that if you have a villain in your trap already, they like fight over who you choose.
Choose Chompy! Well, you gotta pick Broccoli Guy. No, pick me! I'm the champ of Chump!
The problem with this gimmick is that the villains will talk very often throughout the level, and it's cool I guess, but it kind of annoys me when they do it randomly, so even though I really like it, I will be playing with my portal sound off. I honestly can't be bothered to constantly hear villains talking to me, but soon after that, Buzz introduces us to the Traptanium crystals. You need trap masters to destroy them, and you get collectibles by doing so. It's a pretty simple gimmick, but collectibles have returned to the old system from Giants. Now you only get presents for hats and trinkets, and you only get them in elemental gates, and every level has free treasure chests and one special chest that is only unlocked by a villain. And story scrolls have changed a little because now instead of an interesting story you get Flint trying to be funny, and it's painful in my opinion. I've read every single one and only like 2 of them were okay. I did not like them at all. And new collectibles are actually the villains and their quests, but I know you must be confused. What are trinkets? Well, they're a new collectible that you actually don't unlock in levels. You either find them in the Skylanders Academy or X shop, where you get them by leveling up as a Portal Master. And yes, the Portal Master rank is back as well, but it serves absolutely no purpose, because once you level up you get a present which can contain a hat, trinket, or some gold, or it can level up your Skylander, and it's useful, but you don't get nothing else, so it's pretty overlooked in this game, which is stupid because it wasn't great in Swap Force, but you unlocked a lot more stuff with it. Anyways, now we get introduced to the elemental gates, and yeah, you already know that only trap masters can open them, which is annoying and very scummy. It's like new traps weren't enough for them, so they needed the trap masters to sell as well, but I anyways didn't use any Skylanders that weren't swappers in Swap Force, so it doesn't really change that much for me, but it is still a very infuriating decision, but it is what it is. And as always, they are nothing special, and there are some of the worst gates I've ever seen here. And speaking of gates, we get a light element gate, and it's, well, it's an elemental gate for sure. I mean, I don't know why I'm surprised, but I thought for an introduction of an element, they'd at least try to make it special, but I guess I was wrong. And yeah, we beat some enemies, and then there is this area, which I have no idea how you're supposed to notice. I only found it because I've beaten this game many times, but this is just dumb. And then we see that the gulper becomes bigger by drinking soda, and he throws barrels at us, so we need to destroy the giant soda barrels. And I like that he is involved with the platforms we jump on by burping on them, and then we shoot him in the hand, and then Buzz gets an idea.
Just had the most awesome idea! This orange ambrosia cooler was named Soda of the Year. The other green stuff is bottom-feeding suction eel flavored.
This has got to be one of the weirdest things in Skylanders, and that says a lot. I mean, why is this thing even here on a roof of a random house in the middle of a soda festival? How the hell did it end up here?
I guess we'll never know.
Anyways, we use it to poison him, and that's it. What a disappointment. I really like this level, and having a good boss would make it one of my favorite levels, but they completely ruin it with this lazy ending. Like, you'd think they'd go all out to make a good first impression, but clearly from what we have seen so far, they don't like to do that. So because of that, this level gets a 6 out of 10. Now we get introduced to Max, who is another annoying NPC, and she also has her catchphrase, which is yeah, this is the worst one. It's absolutely shocking, yeah. She tells us that the Cloudcracker prison has been blown up, and that means that every single villain is on the loose, including the Doom Raiders, and we have to trap them, but in order to find out what they're like, we have to go to Know-It-All Island so we can ask the Stoneheads about the Doom Raiders, so we know what we are dealing with. Before that though, Max is also the one who makes stuff in the Skylanders Academy, and we can explore it a little bit. You have the wanted posters where you can see which villains you trapped and which quests you did, and I like that they tell you in which levels they are found, and the Chaos one is the only one that doesn't tell you that. And speaking of villains, there is the Villain Vault here, which is a place where you can switch your villains. If you have one water trap and you want a certain villain, this is where you choose to play as it, and you can't change it until the level is done. And Persephone is back, and you can now find her during levels, but the checkpoints are gone. That's weird, but they were never really important, so we can ignore that. And Persephone has her own tree house now, and you can find a trinket there. But now it's time to go to Know-It-All Island, and oh wow, what a shock! It was Chaos who freed the Doom Raiders. I am so surprised. Yeah, he's the main villain again, but I like him more in this game, and the Doom Raiders actually have personalities, and the cutscenes with them are really interesting. I only dislike Doomcatcher, who has a character based around a teenage girl, which is insanely annoying, so I don't know who thought that was a good idea. But Chaos wants to work with the Doom Raiders, but he smells bad, so they turn up on him, but the Golden Queen tells them to leave him alone, but only if he is willing to work on her plan to get all of the gold in Skylands. After that, Buzz sneaks up on Flynn and we get introduced to villain quests. Mags needs the Gulper to bring balloons to kids, which is as stupid as it sounds, and now we are off to do a heroic challenge. This is literally all it is. It even has the same area for Giant's heroic challenges, but yeah, this is so bad. Definitely on the same level as the swap zones, and as I've said, once you do them your villain color changes, and now they're more powerful, but I hate the Gulper's color change. And you may be wondering why my Gulper was already green, and that's because once you do them, they will always be upgraded on every single save file you're using them in that certain trap with which you did the quest, which really annoys me when I'm doing a new playthrough, but it's not a big deal. We fight Tussle Sprout, who is actually pretty good when you play as him, and Arbo is back in this level, which is beautiful, and he even has the same intro as he had in SSA.
I am Arbo, son of Barbo, brother of Larbo. Good thing I always come prepared. And by that, I mean holding a bomb.
We use that bomb to blow up a giant tank, and oh my, this is beautiful. They remastered Falling Forest, and it's so cool. It's definitely one of the best elemental gates ever. But after that, we fight Buzzerbeak, who is one of the worst villains, and I find it kind of lame that there are a lot of enemies that we beat multiple times in a level, and then later we trap that exact same enemy we have already beaten. It's just a bit lame. At least make it the first time we fight an enemy like that, and don't make enemies that are a one-hit the villains unless they are Chompies. To make up for that though, they play with your nostalgia even more, as Blobbers is back as well, and he is as good as he has ever been. Now we push some boulders and then we get the first dark gate, which is even worse than the light one as it's based around pushing a purple ball. Though you can skip that because you can actually double jump in this game by switching from a villain to a swap force Skylander during a jump, and it's a useful tool to absolutely destroy the game. And I love finding ways to break this game just by double jumping all over the place. But yeah, we were pushing some boulders and now we got introduced to the first turret in this game, and there's still nothing special, but the turrets in Trap Team are the best turrets in Skylanders, so I'm actually not that unhappy to see them. And the boss fight here is Slobber Trap, and it isn't as bad as the Gulper, but it's still bad, and he is literally just Slobbertooth made of rocks. Like, what was the point of him being a villain at all? And if you return a little bit, once you trap Slobber Trap, you do his quest, and this is the second version of the quests, and it's just a short cutscene, and that's it. It's not as bad as the heroic challenges, but it's still so disappointing that they couldn't think of anything better for villains. But now we get to explore the Academy more, and there are these 2D areas where you always find a trinket. I think there are 5 of them in the entire academy, and you get a decent amount of gold, but you can only access them once, and if you don't find the trinket, then just enter a level, and once you're back, the area will be open again. We get the first lock puzzle, and it's been changed again and the imp is back, but just like the turrets, these are the best lock puzzles so far because they are pretty fast paced, unlike the previous two. And now we get this entire area and we meet Auric, and I'm glad he's back and he's selling hats, trinkets, Skystones cheats and lock puzzle keys, so you actually don't even need to do the lock puzzles because you can immediately buy the keys and never do them. The fast travel system has also been improved a lot, and it makes exploring this giant area so much better. You have 5 places where you can fast travel, and it's really useful, and because of that, I actually really like the Skylanders Academy as a hub area. There is so much to explore, and the legendary treasures you collect can be placed in the academy, and it adds cool details, though I am sad they don't give you stats anymore, so I kinda feel like Swap Force did it better, which is something I don't say usually. But now it's time to fight the Chompy Mage. Next level is Chompy Mountain, and immediately it gives off Rumbletown vibes, which is my favorite Skylanders level of all time, so I am excited. But that excitement is quickly gone because we get Sheep Creep's quest, which is just shooting sheep at buffaloes, and sometimes I seriously wonder who looks at some of this stuff they put in these games and thinks, yeah, this is perfectly fine, because it isn't. It's horrible. And the aiming doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't help that this Gumbus guy keeps saying, not even close, every time you miss, which makes you want to break your TV.
Not even close! Not even close! Not even close! Not even close!
But you shouldn't do that, because you would miss out on an amazing level. Buzz tells us to convince the Mabu workers to help us in building bridges, and hell yeah, those workers are Rizzo, Snuckles, and North. The gang's all here, and we enter these houses which are very reminiscent of those houses in Giants, and it doesn't take a lot of convincing for the Mabus to help us, and then they start building bridges for us, but unfortunately, Chompy Mage doesn't like bridges, so he starts bombing us, and we must return the favor by shooting him with his own cannons, and it's nice to see him back, but I wish this part lasted a bit longer. After that, we fight Bruiser Cruiser, and I think it's a pretty cool villain with a nice design, but it's pretty easy to defeat it, and then you face the reality and realize this game is insanely difficult, and you should probably be using upgraded Skylanders. But then we get the first quest that we can't do yet. Basically, this happens often in the game where you'll play a level and you'll find a quest for a villain that you haven't trapped yet, and then later you will trap them, so only then you have to go back and do the quest, which is the definition of pointless replaying, because most of these quests are just a cutscene, so this is very stupid. Thankfully, you can just double jump here and access this area that doesn't really have anything, but it won't count as you doing the quest, so you still have to return at some point. But once we enter the mountain, Buzz tells us that the Mabus have been trapped and we need to rescue them again, and while rescuing them you can find Broccoli Guy, who is an actual villain with a name like that, and he doesn't even fight you, and he's just a worse version of the life Spellpunk, and that is another thing actually. This is the first game that doesn't have a single Spellpunk, which is a shame because Broccoli Guy is so much worse. But I do kind of like him at the same time, and once you trap him, he can endlessly heal your Skylanders, which is pretty useful right before a big boss fight. And that's right, once we free all Mabus, Snuckles activates this elevator and we are off to fight Chompy Mage. This boss is hard to do without dying, and it feels a bit too hard for the third level, but I really like it. He throws these Chompy eggs at us like he used to do in Giants, but they create shockwaves here, and they are very difficult to avoid. You really don't notice how stiff jumping in Skylanders is until these things are all over the place and you keep getting hit because you have no clue where you're landing. Then he turns to the giant Chompy and starts spamming these shockwaves, and this is where the fight gets hard, and it may be useful to start tanking hits with your villain. After that he turns into this giant lava Chompy and spams both Chompies and shockwaves even more, and yeah, this is very tough without the villain, but thankfully he has a small amount of health, so it isn't horrible, but it's one of the toughest fights I've fought in Skylanders in general. And we're only on the 3rd level, and once we trap him, the level is done, and this is a top 10 Skylanders level of all time, as you know, and it gets a 10 out of 10. Now all of the Doom Raiders are mad, and Wolfgang starts complaining, and Golden Queen doesn't like his attitude, so she breaks his teeth. And while they're arguing, Chaos and Glumshanks are spying on them behind his picture, and we find out that he wants to sabotage them because they've turned their backs on him. So our next target is Chef Pepperjack, who is trying to make an omelette bomb or something like that. I'm starting to get confused with this whole plot, but I really do like it. And he's going to the Phoenix Sanctuary to get some special eggs, so we must stop him. We meet Tessa again here, and she's much more bearable, and she does fit this level well because of Whiskers, so for the first time I actually don't mind her, and this level is beautiful and it feels very open. There are many places you can explore even though the area isn't huge, because there is a lot of areas above and below the ground, so the design is just amazing. Then you make these bridges with nuts to advance, and later you use your nuts to attract these birds so that you can get past them, because their wings are apparently invincible. Like, yeah, sure, we can kill Chaos, but we can't destroy a bird's wings. And their names suck as well. They could have at least went on Google and gave them random names instead of calling them Bird. Also, this is the only time this happens in the game, but we get an intro cutscene for an enemy. It's these trolls with eggshells on them, and I definitely do like that there aren't those Swap Force cutscenes here, because the pacing is much better. Then we fight against another cool villain called Shrednut, which is a giant saw blade with 2 trolls on top of it. This area is also really fun as it has a huge lengthy fight against a lot of trolls, and then we go inside to get the key, and then once we get out, we fight Chill Bill.
This fella's been called the chillest dude in America.
I aim to freeze.
Once we trap him, we can play as the chillest dude in Skylands, whose chill can only be compared to the Tussle Sprout Bridge, which is also in this level, and it's Arbo who helps us make the bridge. I mean, this level is just amazing in every way possible, and we are not even done yet. We enter this area with giant rolling eggs, and there's traveling through these tunnels that's very similar to the ones in Oil Spill Island, and at the end of the level we get to Chef Pepperjack, and we get an arena battle in this giant nest with these little birds as obstacles, which is really fun. And the boss fight here is Cuckoo Clocker, and while I really like him as a villain, the fight is very lame. He has one single attack and he is way too slow, so it's easy to kill him. After we beat him, Chaos decides to sabotage Chef Pepperjack and they both run away, and apart from the Cuckoo Clocker fight, this level is perfect and it gets the second 10 out of 10 in a row. But Chef Pepperjack was able to get what he wanted to make his spicy omelette au doom, so we still have to defeat him, and he's located on a blimp, which is pretty much a flying kitchen with a lot of defensive canyons. But before that, can you guess the next NPC that is back from older games? Is it T-Bone? Hermit? Gurglefin? Yeah, Brock is back, and so are his arena battles, and I'll talk about them all later, but I just want to say that they are very hard, and most of them are really fun. There are some that aren't great, but overall it's a great experience. But now it's time for a brand new NPC called Crossbones, and he is the leader of a band, and he is asking us to defeat NPCs in rap battles, and oh my, you can have a rap battle with Arbo. I have to do it. You can choose difficulty here, and I'm going with the hardest one, and while Arbo just says his old lines and we just say yeah, and it's just a quick time event, it's still something unexpected, and I can't say I didn't enjoy it.
I'm a tree! I'm a tree! Oh yeah!
Alright, it's time to go to Chef Zeppelin and defeat Chef Pepperjack. And this one starts off with the flying turret section, and it's not that bad, it's still not something I like, but I definitely don't hate it as much as I did in previous games, and the point of this is to get rid of the defense canyons so that we can land on the ship. And you can tell they try to make the turrets more interesting with the whole score thing and collecting the gems and getting coins. And honestly, don't speak to me if you can't collect all of the gems on every turret section, because that means that you're an absolute failure. But during the fight, Flynn gets injured and goes back to the academy, so we are left with Tessa. But we only talk to her once, so it doesn't really matter. And I have to get the negatives out of the way. And those are these areas where you're supposed to randomly drop and find stuff. And it's not the worst thing ever because you can clearly see the soul gem for some reason, but there are two of them, so it's a bit dumb, because if you jump once and find this area, you'd think that that's all there is, but no, there's another one with a legendary treasure in it. The other thing I dislike is this elemental gate that's just waiting on balloons, but apart from that, I love this level. It's a giant flying kitchen, so everything is kitchen themed. There are plenty of dishes to destroy, which feels oddly satisfying, and then these canyons shoot out tomatoes. Food is used as obstacles, and goddamn, I didn't know food could hurt so much. I almost died here. But there are also forks, spoons, straws, and more food on the walls, and these gates are made of cutlery, and around the middle there is a giant furnace. The fire elemental gate is about baking bread, so this is definitely one of my favorite levels when it comes to design and details. We fight Bombshell, and this is a thing I never understood, but the number of villains is so unevenly spread throughout different elements for no reason. The magic element has only 3 villains, and it doesn't even have a Doom Raider, even though I always felt like the magic element is the most important one in Skylands, so this doesn't really make any sense. And water, tech and life elements have 6 villains, while undead, earth, fire and air elements have 4. So that difference was always weird to me, and really they could have made 3 for each element and delete some of them, like Slobber Trap, Buzzerbeak, Grenade, Rage Mage, Mastermind, Trolling Thunder, and so on. But let's return to Chef Zeppelin. We have destroyed Bombshell, and now we enter the inside of the kitchen, and Batterson has returned, which is a really fitting NPC for this level, and he is the one who teaches us the new version of Skystones called Skystone Smash. Now you and the opponent have health, and your Skystones also have health and damage they deal. If an opponent's Skystone is in front of yours, they will battle individually until at least one of them is destroyed, and if there isn't anything in front of it, your Skystone will attack the opponent. I also really like that your Skystones are the villains you've trapped, and the Doom Raiders can give you special abilities like dealing damage to all Skystones at once or giving you more health, and I usually just tend to ignore the Skystones fights and just try to deal as much damage as possible to my opponent, and it seems to work the most. But I'll be honest, at the end of the day I just bought the Skystone sheets, so I just skipped almost all of the Skystones fights in this game. But I do like them, I just didn't feel like spending unnecessary time on them, and overall, they're definitely close to the level of Giant Skystones, but I don't know which one I prefer. It's probably the Giants one, but both are great. There is one problem I have with Skystone Smash, and that is that there is nothing you gain from it. In Giants, you had to beat all of the NPCs to unlock all of the Skystones, but since now all of the Skystones are unlocked by defeating villains, there is no point in playing Skystones unless you have to do it to progress through the level, so that's a bit disappointing. So in order to clear that sour disappointment, let's go find something a bit spicier in the kitchen, and oh, would you look at that, it's Chef Pepperjack, the spicy pepper himself, and yeah, we get to fight him. And my god, it's so good. It starts off with him running into you and throwing exploding peppers at you that leave a fire trail, and every time he hits a wall, dishes fall, which is a cool detail. After that, he starts with these lasers, and they are pretty challenging, and then as the fight goes on, he throws even more of those peppers to the point where the entire area is covered in fire, which is slightly unfair, but it's also pretty cool, and the lasers also become harder as the fight goes on, and he does these annoying things where he pauses the laser movement, or speeds it up, or changes the direction, which can mess you up, and then later he starts throwing raw steak at you while lasers are moving across the floor and the ground starts heating up, and this is such an intense part, and this would be absolute perfection of a boss fight if it wasn't for the moving camera at the end of the fight, which is really annoying, and I don't see why it couldn't have just stayed at the same place, and it ruins the ending a little bit, but don't get it twisted, this is still such an amazing boss fight. And then we trap him, and that's it for the level. Chef Zeppelin gets a 9 out of 10, and it's the end of what's probably the best free level run in Skylanders, with 2 10s and then a 9. After the level, we get a really interesting cutscene. The Doom Raiders are angry that we trapped Chef Pepperjack, but Golden Queen is more focused on her ultimate weapon, and Chaos gets absolutely owned. And then we find out that Golden Queen's plan is not to rule over Skylands, it's actually to get all of the gold. And I actually agree with Chaos here, as he gets angry at her for not wanting to be an emperor of Skylands and only settling down for gold. And it makes him so angry he challenges her to an evil off, which is probably a PvP fight in Spyro's Adventure, and obviously Chaos gets owned again as he is turned into a gold statue while the Doom Raiders take his base and Glumshanks. At the end of the cutscene, Chaos says he needs help and he's going to do something unthinkable that not even he expected, but we have to go to the next level to find out what that is. Yeah, that's right. Right after the cutscene, we get a zoom in on Flynn's toes, which is literally the last thing I expected to see. But let's not get distracted, we have unlocked a new area in the Academy, and that's the kitchen, but there is pretty much nothing here for now, so let's go to the next level. Rainfish Riviera is up next, and oh my, the Leviathan is back. That's actually great. Can't wait to get eaten again. But Max leads us through this level, and I don't think I need to explain why that is a problem. And the level looks really cool, but it sucks. I mean, the first villain here is Brawlrus, and his fight is painful, and I kind of wish they brought back those old pirate enemies, as I'm not a big fan of these new ones. Then we get I-5's quest, which is about collecting presents, and it's just killing enemies for 7 minutes, with some random stuff happening every now and then, and I hate it. And its name is horrible.
What can it be? Lifetime supply of bombs.
Then we get this confusing elemental gate where you get blasted and have a solid chance of dying, and then we fight another lame villain, which is Mastermind. The only thing Mastermind does is revive dead enemies, which is super annoying, and for some reason when he comes back as just an enemy, he is invincible until you get rid of all enemies, and all of the ones he revives, which is dumb. It would be better if you could kill him before he can revive the enemies, that would make much more sense. After that, we also get this horrible crane thing where you pick enemies up and throw them in the water, and then it happens again later, and it's the worst part of the level, even though it is kind of nice that you can throw mags in the water. But there are also these bridge puzzles which we get introduced to in this level, and they are okay. I don't like them, but I can tolerate them. And the best part of this level is probably Brawlrus's quest, where you enter this submarine, which is a pretty cool area, and it makes me wonder if a level where you get to explore a giant submarine would work in Skylanders, but we will never find out. And the last villain fight is against Brawl and Chain, even though we have already thrown like 10 of them in the water, which makes the fight a lot less interesting. And there is another horrible quest with Chef Pepperjack this time, where you collect cheese and run away from heads that reduce the timer, but you have 10 minutes, so there is no challenge here, so you can realistically just double jump over the gate and get the treasure chest, but you still need to do the quest for 100% unfortunately. And at the end of the level, we catch the Leviathan and we get to go inside it, which is a cool throwback and a great ending. Though I feel like we could have gotten a boss fight and then trapped the Leviathan, but it is what it is. We have acquired what we wanted, which was Mag's information squid, and it's time to go back. As for Rainfish Riviera, it's pretty disappointing, and I'd give it a 5 out of 10.
That doesn't sound like my information squid.
Yeah, it turns out that Chaos was somehow the information squid that was inside of the Leviathan. I have no clue how, but he is here to help us in our fight against the Doom Raiders because he's salty that he got owned 2 times in a row, and he tells us what Dreamcatcher's plan is so that we can defeat her. And I like Chaos as a random NPC in the hub area, and he actually has some interesting stuff to say.
I used to think that fool Flynn was singularly annoying. Then I met Buzz. They're so similar. It's like looking into a mirror of stupid! Apparently, Flynn is a giant fan of enchiladas. I myself was unfamiliar with such fare, but I actually found them quite tasty. I'm even considering keeping them around once I conquer Skylands as its ultimate evil overlord! Cute couple, that Flynn and Callie. I know because I hate cute couples, and I hate them! Oh, how I hate them!
But before we go to the next level, Hatterson returns, and in order for him to open his hat shop, we need to do the Hoodsickle quest. And I would say it's cool that you have quests in the Academy, but I've already explained why I hate them. At least this one opens up a hat shop, which is full of hats from older games, but not all of them for some reason. But then we have a very disappointing return of yet another older NPC, and that is Dreadbeard, and man, look what they've done to him. I mean, it's just a hat and a slight design change, but it's so annoying that he looks like every other pirate in this game. But yeah, he has the same purpose as he had in Giants, because you play Skystones against him, but as I said, there is really no purpose in that, so yeah, don't do it. Also, there is this thing where you can get to a higher area by changing Skylanders, but also don't do that, because you'll waste your time as you only get 150 gold. Now we're off to Monster Marsh, and I really love the concept of this level. It's a cursed town that's located in a swamp, and bad stuff keeps happening, which is proved even more when Dreamcatcher destroys half the fucking town, but let's slow down now. At the start, this camper guy warns us about the place and that it is cursed, but we don't really care. And just a little thing I like, they kept the thing from SSA where you give every single Mabu a different hat, so that's pretty cool. What isn't cool is that immediately at the start we get another one of those quests, and this time it's ice creams, and I can't do it yet, but I already know it sucks, and so does this area. This is the only thing I missed in my entire playthrough. I honestly don't know how anybody is supposed to know that there is an area down here when there is zero indication of it existing. But anyways, this elemental gate reminds me of Swap Force a lot. And then we fight Chomp Chest, and I like him, but he doesn't really fit this level in my opinion. But what I like about the level is that it's full of these enemies that are some kind of dolls or toys. As you can see, they're knitted, so Chomp Chest doesn't belong here at all. I feel like he would have been better in one of the desert levels, but that's just me. Now we meet Hedwig, who I know a lot of people dislike, but I think he's a solid NPC. He's nothing special, but they only gave him 2 levels, so I won't judge. And apart from the fact he has a giant candle on his head, he is the guy who leads us through this level and the next level. And look at this, yet another thing they brought back from older games. They're really playing with my feelings. Later in the level, we meet Ice Cream, who we can defeat in the same level as her quest. But we can't go back, which is obviously insanely stupid. And what's equally stupid is this enemy that's very common in this one and the next level. You can't hit them while they are in the air, and their balls will follow you and can hit you very easily, and you get a short amount of time with them on the ground when you can finally kill them. After that whole fight, we meet Marsha, who is just Persephone dressed in black, and she has the same voice actor, so this does feel a bit lazy. But we need her in order to create a force field so that we can go through the poisonous swamp, and in the middle of the swamp we get a dark gate and it's pinball. Great. We also fight Ice Cream, and she is definitely one of the worst villains to play as, with a horrible pun for a name, but at least she has a cool design. And we also fight I5, yes, another I pun, but he is slightly better. He's still nothing special though. And then we finally reach the town where Dreamcatcher has clearly started catching the dreams because everybody is sleeping, and unfortunately they didn't give these Mabus their own hats, which is very sad. And then we have to wake them up while they're sleeping in air, while Dreamcatcher complains in the background, and then we get to the end, and it's an arena battle and it's really fun. But while Dreamcatcher was stealing their dreams, she got the location of the science lab so that she can find out how to use the power of Traptanium, so that's where we're going next. As for this level, I love it, but it's not amazing. The pinball gate, the ice cream quest, this area, and the length are things that I dislike, but I love the way it looks, and the arena battle, so I'd give it a 7 out of 10. The next level is Telescope Towers, where we immediately start with a quest. I am so sick of this, and it's the worst quest in the game. Basically, you have to go through this entire area and light up houses with Brawl and Chain, but he's so slow. I don't know who thought this was acceptable. It's one of the worst things I've ever done in a Skylanders game. But let's forget about that and focus on the level ahead of us. And first of all, it looks very cool. It's designed in such a crazy way, but I love it. It feels like you're hallucinating with all of the stuff that's thrown in here, like the clown heads, falling tiles, weird types of butterflies, I guess, grabbing onto beds, a scientist that gets turned to a chicken, flying narwhals, and balls with propeller caps and other stuff as well. And I really like it, and these blue areas look really good. And Hedwig is also in this level, as I've already mentioned, and he shows us these puzzles with pushing blocks and jumping on these buttons, and this is something I don't like, but it's not terrible. Dreamcatcher also pops up sometimes to complain, as always. They really made her unlikable for some reason. And why are these guys wearing hats in the pictures, but they're not wearing them in the actual game? Did they forget to put them on? I know it's weird and I'm questioning their hats when this guy's literally getting possessed, but the hats bother me too much, so I have to move on. These blue tiled areas are cool despite the tiles themselves being very glitchy, much like everything else in this game. And then you start waking Mabus up again, and then you fight Hoodsicle, whose fight isn't great, but he's very useful as a villain and very cool, so I can ignore it. In fact, this is one of the best villain selections in this game, with Hoodsicle, Painata, and Dreamcatcher. I wish every single level had villains like this, because the game would feel a lot more focused on the villains, rather than most of them feeling like a piss-easy mini-fight. And look at this! They added the Minecraft dropper to Skylanders. That's so cool. Now we have the Dreamcatcher fight, and yes, it's really weird that it's this far into the game after both of the Chompy Mage and Chef Pepperjack boss fights, which were so much harder and better. But I think this fight is overhated. I think it's decent. It's not amazing, but I still enjoy it, and it's relaxing to get an easy boss fight after so long, even though I probably would have liked it more if it was a hard fight. But as I said, it's still fine enough, and Telescope Towers gets a 9 out of 10. When we return to the Academy, Flynn is healed and we need to go to Mystic Mill to defeat Crankcase's evil army of Wilikins. And can you guess what they're called? That's right, E-Wilikins. Very creative, I must say. Luckily, we have the Mabu Defense Force with us, so Mystic Mill is a throwback to the tech levels from Spyro's Adventure, where you worked with the Mabu spies to defeat the trolls, which is yet another cool throwback in this game. But what isn't cool is the start of this level. First, there is this area on a flying ship, and it's so empty. There are no areas to explore or enemies to fight. You just push boxes and jump until you reach the end of the ship, and the problem is, this would have been so much better with just the addition of enemies. This could even be an arena battle at the start of the level, which is something we have never seen, but it's completely empty for some reason, and then when we regain the control of the ship, you go into a turret section. And only after like 4 minutes you get to finally play the actual level, and that is when you realize you have another quest at the start of another level. So realistically, it takes you around 8 minutes to start the level if you're trying to complete it, which is horrible. Once we start playing the fucking level, it's decent, it looks good, and Shrednot's quest is actually done well, in the sense of it being used multiple times in a level to access different areas, and other quests should have been like this, but I'm sick of complaining about the quests. I mean, we're not even halfway through the game, so I need to stop. This enemy here is only used in this game once, and it wasn't even meant to be in this game, but it's somehow in this game. How that happened, I do not know. But one of the things I like is that the Mabus actually fight the Wilikins and you can create an army of them. However, there are two of these big bridge puzzles and they're not great. And the Frankenstein fight is also not great, so this level gets a 5 out of 10. And I have to say that this is one of the most pointless levels in this game, because we are trying to stop Crankcase from making an Wilikin army by taking over the mill. But they still attack us in upcoming levels, so that just makes no sense. After the level though, Quigley is back and he looks horrendous, and he tells us about this area where apparently only mini guys like him can go, and I'm guessing they're trying to tell me to use the minis, but since I didn't bring any of my minis, I had to do it like a real man. Now this is where the story gets pretty weird. The Doom Raiders need something that's very stinky to make their ultimate weapon work, and we have to go to the secret sewers of Supreme Stink to stop them from getting the goo that's located there. Why the ultimate weapon needs something that stinks? I have no clue, but at least we find out where the green goo from SSA is from, so that's cool, I guess. It's nice knowing that we poured the goo from the sewers into one of the most important things in the universe. But I like this level. We start outside and after some exploring we go into the sewers. Now one of the problems with this level is that it has two quests, Chomp Chest's quest, and I can't explain why, but this Flam Blam guy is really mesmerizing to me. Like, he's a dragon called Flam Bam, which is an obvious flip on Slam Bam, and he looks cool, but why is a dragon inside of the worst smelling place in Skylands? That doesn't make any sense. And why is he so goddamn annoying? He keeps screaming hot dog every time you eat a hot dog in the quest.
Hot dog! Hot diggity dog! Hot dog! Hot diggity dog!
Once we enter the sewers, we meet Verl, who is scared of germs and runs away from us. I don't really know why he's scared of germs. I mean, he says that and then jumps into the goo. So that's a bit weird, but I like him and he suspects we are Skylanders, but he wants us to prove it, so he lets us fight enemies in the sewers, and I like the sewer area. I think it's a pretty cool area in general.
It's all sorts of good, it has fish in it, and it...
And then we get another quest which is inside of the sewers. It's for Pinata, and this is one of the rare quests that I actually don't mind because the singing geckos return, so that's a cool throwback to Giants this time. And after defeating more Wilikins, we meet the first villain of the level called Rage Mage, and he's definitely the worst villain in the game. At the end we get an arena battle, and it's another great ending to a level, as it's now Verl who is sending enemies to attack us, so that we prove to him that we really are Skylanders, and near the end he says this.
Well, I've certainly seen enough. But, unfortunately, I've already told Fisticuffs here you were coming, and he wanted to have a go. Sorry!
Okay, that's a pretty good introduction to a villain fight, and once we defeat him, that's the end of the level, and it's pretty good. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Now this is where the plot becomes really interesting. Crankcase informs Golden Queen that they no longer have the goo, but he has another idea.
We can replace the stinky goo with this.
What? A slice of cheese? Yeah, that's not nearly stinky enough.
Wolfgang saying the cheese is not stinky enough will always be funny to me, but Crankcase explains that the cheese stinks even more than the goo, but only 10,000 years in the future, so they need to travel through time. But the problem is you can only travel through time with the Portal Master, and the only one in Skylands is Chaos, so they need to find him. At the same time, we get a postcard from Chaos's old Wilikin factory that's been taken over by Crankcase, so that's where we're headed next. And Chaos is coming with us, so I'm very excited. And I really love the chemistry between Chaos and Flynn, and it's highlighted in this cutscene, and this is one of the funniest cutscenes in Skylanders. I'll be honest, this is the best Chaos has been. And I really like the way that, because he goes with us in this level, we eventually cross paths with Doom Raiders who are actively looking for him. That's a pretty good part of the story that I think is kind of underrated. But I don't really like this Flynn. I already complained about his story scrolls, but his entire personality in this game is eating enchiladas, churros, and chili. It's just a bit lame compared to the Flynn from Giants or Swap Force. As for the level, it's amazing. We finally get to explore the place where Wilikins were made, and we do it with Chaos himself, who keeps getting owned by everyone in this game.
Hi, stranger. This factory is under new ownership. New master is not friend to Wilikin like old master, but smell much better.
Here is yet another cool throwback to Cadaverous Crypt from Spyro's Adventure, and near the start we meet these annoying bastards that can absolutely destroy your Skylanders, and this level is pretty tough because you fight most of the Wilikins here, and when you think you're done with these things, Scrap Shooter comes out of nowhere, and now you have an entire villain to defeat as well. But I managed to do it with Crypt King, even though I barely had any health for most of the fight. After that, we get the shortest elemental gate ever, and Chaos keeps getting offended at the way Crankcase is ruining his factory, which is brilliant.
I ask you, what have I ever done to deserve this?
The inside of the factory is a great area with even more fighting and avoiding these things, which are nostalgic as hell, and there are none of those annoying heroic challenges in this level. But just when I thought everything was perfect, the crane is back, which is lame, but it's very short, so it doesn't bother me too much. And then we have another cool area which is building up the hype to the upcoming Crankcase boss fight, and then it starts. It's an amazing boss fight, but it's one of the easier Doom Raider fights, and Gear Shift absolutely destroys him. He starts off by dropping on you and spinning into you, but that part's pretty easy. Then he starts dropping these barrels on you and opens up goo, which you can fall into, but this is still easy. And then we find out he trapped Chaos, and then he builds a big Wilikin who has a lot of health and deals a ton of damage, but Gear Shift destroys him as well. And then Wolfgang comes in, but he just runs away with Chaos instead of fighting you, which is a bit disappointing. Imagine getting two boss fights at once. That would be so amazing, but hey, it is what it is. Crankcase realizes he's weak, so he decides to chop you up and shoots goo at you and builds another big Wilikin and keeps attacking you, and his spin attack becomes longer and faster, so it's much more annoying now. And this is the only hard part of the boss fight, but I still did it without dying, and once we trap Crankcase, the level is over and it gets a 9 out of 10. Now Wolfgang is going to Time Town with Chaos to travel 10,000 years in the future, so that is our next stop.
So, this is what they do, Chaos? Just fly in, land somewhere nearby, and eventually mess up your plan.
Ooh, they're becoming self-aware now. I like it. This level honestly looks amazing in my opinion. It has a ton of details in the background that I love, and we meet the Pinchy here, and I like him. He has an interesting name, an Italian accent, and he is a painter, and he leads us through this level. Now it's time to complain though. Like, why does this take so long? It's not like there is an area loading, this is already loaded, so this is just badly designed. And these mini games where you hit pipes with a hammer are so random and boring. And Tessa gives us another heroic challenge here, and Crosscrow is the only villain of this level, and you don't even need to fight him to beat the level. So that sucks. But what I do like is the Crankcase quest, because much like Shredknot's quest, this one is needed to explore multiple areas, so that's great. Also, Crosscrow is a really good villain to play as, even though it was pretty annoying to defeat him, and once you defeat all of the birds attacking you, who are by the way a pretty cool species for an enemy, you get Wolfgang, but he travels in time, and that's it. It's a pretty underwhelming ending, and I kinda don't like this level as much as I used to, and it gets a 5 out of 10. It just feels kinda unnecessary, because nothing happens in it apart from Wolfgang running away to the future, but that could have been the start to the next level instead of an ending to this one. The Pinchy can travel through time for some reason, so he helps us do it as well, and now we are in the future of Skylands, which is the next level. Apparently, all that's going on in the future is Wolfgang making really loud concerts, and we must stop him from breaking the sound barrier, or something like that. And oh, wow! What a creative futuristic level. Everything is great in space and there are flying cars. I have definitely never seen this before. At least all of the Mabus we know are in this level with futuristic names. North is Nortron, I'm guessing that Noobman is Noobry, Quigley is still Quigley, just with every letter having a dot after it. Snuckles just gets a number, and Blobbers becomes a Zeta. And this is a serious question. Does anybody actually understand how this elemental gate works? Because I don't. I just jump on these platforms in hopes of accidentally getting to somewhere, and it's a really annoying gate. At this point, I'd usually say something like, this level looks good, but I actually don't like the way this level looks. Everything is grey, as I've said, and it looks dead, and it really doesn't fit in Skylanders apart from these robots. And there is a ton of stuff that annoys me, like the new enemy Blastertron, who has this annoying shield that protects him and damages you, or these flying platforms that take ages. Then we get Wolfgang's quest, and it's bad, but at least it stays in the same area of the level, which I think every single quest should have done. It wouldn't have made them much better, but at least it would feel more fitting in a level. This is another obvious throwback to older games, so that's one of the rare nice things in this level, but after that we hop on Snuckles' flying ship, which then gets grabbed, but we quickly get rid of the things that grabbed us in this pushing block area and continue as if nothing happened, which makes me feel like this was pretty unnecessary. And another unnecessary part that's arguably the worst part of the entire game is this area where you're supposed to avoid these atoms, and as you can tell, it's very entertaining. Then near the end of the level we get to fight Blastertron, and then when you think you're about to fight Wolfgang, you first have to destroy the big bad woofer before he makes a very loud concert, and you need to do that in this flying ship, which just randomly appears out of nowhere. And now we get another bad section in this level where you just fly around the big bad woofer, shooting at the force shield and power conduits, but at least at the end we get to fight Wolfgang, and it's an amazing fight. He starts it by jumping off the speakers and knee sliding into you and sending these annoying notes that chase you for a pretty long time, while he also attacks you with his bone guitar and drops onto you. Then he continues doing that same pattern, but this time it's in 2D, and that actually makes it easier because he will always attack you the same way, and the notes now just go up and down instead of chasing you. And even though that's the easiest part, I still managed to die, so I decided to switch to Drobot because the next phase is the lasers, and man, this is so hard to dodge, especially if your Skylanders are tall. This does happen in a pattern with some rare exceptions, but it's still hard to memorize and avoid them, and I hate the ones that are on the ground because you have to jump over them and at the same time avoid the other lasers on the screen, and then the last phase is all of that combined, which makes it one of the hardest things in Skylanders, and I even died with Drobot. But eventually you will beat him, and that's it for the level. This one is horrible. It's like they wanted to make a bad level on purpose because every single thing is done badly, apart from the Wolfgang fight, which is unreal. So that makes it even more confusing how they make something so bad and good at the same time. But Future of Skylands gets a 1 out of 10. Even though Wolfgang is defeated, he still managed to send the cheese to Golden Queen through some time travel delivery way, and this delivery robot makes a very short appearance, but man, I find it hilarious. Now the ultimate weapon is done, and Golden Queen makes some rules and puts Time Town in a snow globe to show what she can do if we disobey her, and as always, it would make much more sense if she trapped her main fucking threat instead of a painter that lives in a clock, but I'm used to the villains being idiots, so it's nothing new.
Oh, why were things never this easy for me?
Well, it's not like you could have evilized Skylands if you didn't tell us your exact location in the last game so we could come to stop you, but yeah, sure, you've never had it easy. The next thing we need to do is find the gold tracker in Sky Highlands so we can find the location of Golden Queen, but that place is full of bird pirates and it's very far into the sky, so we will need a giant rocket and we need to steal it from the trolls, so that's the next level. Here we build another Mabu army and we free Snuckles, North and Rizzo for the third time. But this time we are fighting trolls, so this is even more reminiscent of the Goo Factory as it has the same enemies as well and these walls. But thankfully it doesn't have those annoying mega bombs. But this level is just pretty forgettable. It's full of lock puzzles and that's it. Nothing really happens here, but there is nothing to complain about either. The only part of the level that's genuinely good is the arena battle at the end, which is very good, and you fight Threatpack, who is one of the more interesting villains that you fight in the arena battles, because he starts off as Professor Nilbog, but switches his name to Threatpack once he decides to fight us. But that's it for the level. There is literally nothing else here, so it gets a 6 out of 10. And even though they keep the childish humor here, I've thoroughly enjoyed these recent dialogues between Chaos, Flynn and Buzz, which is something that rarely happens, so fair play. Now Max brings us some of our old flying machines so we can fight the air pirates, and it's time to go to Sky Highlands. Damn, I didn't expect all of this. I mean, the robot is back, and so is Flynn's ship and the Archean copter, so I'm hyped to fly in this again, but meh, it's not that fun. The whole start of this level is flying in circles until you kill the pirates, and none of the NPCs that have come with us help you, so that's a bit lame, but hopefully the level improves once we start the actual gameplay. This is a rare type of level in Skylanders where you're going vertically instead of horizontally, and I like the way it looks, and we meet Hawkmungus here, who is a pretty cool villain, and he wants to play Skystones with you, and then you beat him, so he goes away, but then we get a turret section, which is pretty stupid considering we already did this in the Archean copter, and there are 3 turret sections here that just ruined this level for me because they are all the same. After the second turret, Hawkmungus is back for a rematch, but we destroy him again, so he goes away again. Then we have this water element gate, which I was hoping I could entirely skip by double jumping on this platform, but it wouldn't let me open the present, so I had to do it the normal way. But that isn't the case for the life gate, which you don't even need to enter to get this hat. At the end, there is this big fight against the bird pirates, which is very fun, and then Hawkmungus changes his name to Taekwon Crow for some reason, and decides that he wants to chop us up, which is a bit of an extreme way to respond to losing in Skystones, but just like in Skystones, he lost again, so now we can use the Gold Finder to locate the Golden Queen, and it turns out she's in the Golden Desert. What a shocker. As for this level, it gets a 5 out of 10, mainly because of the turret sections, but now it's time to go to the Golden Desert, and man, I did not miss the desert levels at all.
Skylander, I'll meet you up ahead by the catapult. And Flynn, you've always been my guy in the sky.
Why is Callie likable all of a sudden? I have no idea what happened during Skylanders Swap Force while she was gone, but she has come back completely different, which is good because she's the one guiding us through this level. Unfortunately though, this is another level that starts with a heroic challenge, this time for Taekwon Crow, so that's disappointing, and so are these Chompy worms who, instead of being a villain to trap, are just these shooting sections, and we do them twice, so that's pretty lame. And one of the rare things I like here are all of these tough villains that are based around ancient Egypt, and it's cool that you can avoid them by standing on an edge. Yeah, this game is very buggy. We even have Bone Chompy doing his best Blastertron impression. After we defeat the second worm Chompy, Golden Queen turns Callie into a gold statue, and this is the same thing that annoyed me in Swap Force when Chaos's mom trapped Tessa and not us, so it seems like they haven't learned from their mistakes. But at least it will be interesting to see what happens to Callie.
Fucking off that, you cunt! Send that to your fucking friends!
After entering the temple, the level becomes much better because this area is pretty cool and there is a ton of fighting, even though this elemental gate is disgustingly bad. Not only do these balloons take ages, but there is also this area to the side, which I thought would lead you to something new, but it leads you back to the beginning, which is completely idiotic considering that there is a teleporter at the end of the gate that anyways brings you back to the start. So this is probably the worst elemental gate ever. But what completely saves this level from being an absolute failure is the ending arena battle, which is yet another solid fight, and here you get to fight Grave Clobber, who is such a cool villain, though this whole introduction would have been much cooler if we hadn't already fought like 3 Grave Clobbers until now, but it's the thought that counts, and once you finish the fight, you have rescued Golden Callie, but it's not the end, because there is still one more area to explore. What was the point of this area? I mean, the only explanation I have is that this is another thing they forgot to remove from the game, but come on, it's becoming a common theme now. Anyways, once we get to Golden Callie, Flynn gets emotional, but then remembers what Andrew Tate said,
"Can't be a pussy." Well, I had a heart attack. Get the fuck up.
And immediately switches up. That's it for this level, and it's like a 3 out of 10. Now Golden Queen is all mad, so she sends the ultimate weapon towards us, so we quickly need to go to her lair.
Gold Callie! Well, you're not gold anymore. You're, regular.
I'll take that as a compliment. Mags fixed me up. Yep, I had a degoldifier in the basement.
Of course, she had a degoldifier. What was even the point of that entire level then? It literally led to nothing. Let's just go to defeat the Golden Queen. This is just continuing the Desert Temple theme, which is fine by me. And this is a pretty tough area to discover. I only know it because I know the game, but it is a bit stupid to expect anybody to discover this on purpose, and then you get to fight this thing, which is one of the toughest enemies ever, with the eyes that fall on you and then explode into these small purple things that annihilate you. However, I only brought one air trap master with me, and there is an air gate in this level, so I'll have to retry this. But to exit this weird area, you have to beat Mutt in Skystones, and now we can continue the level. And then something weird happens. We meet Glumshanks, who gives us the quest for Bad Juju, and he calls Bad Juju a he. So now I don't really understand what's going on here, and if this is a mistake, or if Bad Juju was first a male in Trap Team, but then became a female in Imaginators. It's just confusing. And another confusing thing is, you get this key, but if you open this gate to get the Winged Sapphire, you won't be able to open the gate for this treasure chest, meaning that this is the first time since the Oracle that we have to replay a level for a collectible. But we anyways need to replay the level for the Bad Juju quest, so it isn't that important, I guess. Then Callie introduces us to these flying eyes that are the security system here, and this is poorly done. You can just walk on the sides and avoid them completely, and if they capture you, they send you back a lot, so that's pretty annoying, not even interesting. Now we get Graveclobber's quest where we are supposed to free Flynn, and I always wondered why this never affected the actual story. I mean, Flynn got trapped, so why is he here? But yeah, I guess that would take too much effort to make consequences for your choices, but yeah, it's another dreadful quest, so let's move on. We fight Bad Juju, who is much weaker than this thing, so he or she gets overshadowed. And also, we can't even return to Glumshanks to do the quest, so that's just great. I guess you can call that deja vu. Mutt's brother, the next NPC, is called Nut. Okay, I'll stop. Now it's time to fight the Golden Queen, and I must say, this staircase is long, but it really does hype you up for what is about to come.
Get ready for the fight of your life!
Come on, man, I've done this 3 times already. I'm not afraid. Yeah, this fight is brutal. It starts off pretty normally with just these shockwaves, which are probably the easiest shockwaves or lasers to avoid, but then she makes these golden things that shoot shurikens at you, and this is where the fight gets incredibly difficult, and we are only on her second attack. The problem is actually hitting the golden thing as it's constantly moving, and these shurikens are following you, so you have to dodge them while dealing minimal damage. But I managed to do that, but then she decides to make another one and send shockwaves at you, and this is so hard. I could barely deal any damage and quickly died. I did manage to do it with gear shift though, and then she kept making the shockwaves while the arena got smaller, and then she made yet another one of those things, and this is even harder because you have less space, and I obviously quickly died again. Of course, you can just use a flying Skylander and destroy these phases because you're invincible while flying above gold, so I tried to do that with Drobot, but it doesn't seem to work well with him. I mean, I still destroyed the thing, but then after trying to smash me a couple of times, she made 4 of them at once on this very small platform, and yeah, this is insane. The more you destroy them, the more the ones that are left shoot at you, which is actually a pretty cool way of making a boss fight difficult. I actually really like this, even though I'm getting destroyed. But I destroyed them as well. And then she decided to turn into a giant. Wrong game, dumbass. And now she's the one shooting shurikens and making shockwaves at the same time, and these patterns of attacks for some reason mess me up, so I get hit very often in this phase, and then she makes 6 of these things, and my god, this phase is so difficult and feels long, even though it isn't. I guess I've seen these shurikens so much they've started affecting my feeling of time, and after dying twice, I destroyed them with Wildfire, who turned out to be pretty good for this phase, and at the end of the fight, she starts chasing you, and Callie runs with you until you destroy these pillars and defeat her, and I kinda like how chill Callie is while she's being chased by a giant golden queen, and if I'm being real, this section could have been so much better and cooler if they actually put some effort into it. I mean, you can't even see the obstacles in front of you that you are supposed to destroy, which is a bit disappointing. But man, I do not care at all. This boss fight is nuts, and I enjoy this level much more than I used to, and it gets an 8 out of 10. Okay, I've been waiting to complain about this ever since Chaos joined us after the 6th level. This is so predictable, but even that wouldn't be a huge problem if they didn't literally spoil this in the first trailer for the game. I mean, the whole highlight of that trailer is the Chaos Trap, and there isn't a single mention of the Golden Queen, so did anybody get surprised about this? At the very least, they could have made him a magic villain so that there is something surprising about this. and we are anyways missing a magic Doom Raider, but nope. Instead, I have this bald trap sitting in my room all this time while I'm working with Chaos, as if he's not about to completely betray me. One thing that is interesting is once Chaos enters the ultimate weapon and smells the cheese, the stink is so bad that he gets powers to see us, which is quite interesting, but they don't really do anything with this. I mean, I don't see Chaos coming into my room to cut me up with his Shraptanium scissors, so that's pretty disappointing.
Hey, this is kinda like old times here, Skylander. You and me going to stop Chaos from doing something absolutely diabolically fiendish. So many memories.
Last level of the game. It's alright. Aside from it feeling like the last level and Chaos constantly speaking to you even through your portal, which is pretty cool, there really is nothing going on here. It's not even that tough of a level, with the only tough enemy here being Smokescreen, so that's pretty weird for a game which has been so hard up to this point. It doesn't even add new enemies aside from Smokescreen. We even have level 1 enemies, which is pretty weird. One thing I appreciate though is the comeback of Newbury, the NPC with the cutest smile from Shattered Island, who has clearly become a doctor since then. Aside from that, we do some laser puzzles, go on these rotating platforms, and would you look at that, we are already about to fight Chaos, and I will say this immediately, this fight is amazing, so this level gets a 6 out of 10. And now, let's focus on the end of the story. Chaos becomes devious AF, and now we have to own him for like the 5th time in this video. He starts off by going absolutely ham with these shockwaves, but then he chills a bit and stops sending them in quick succession, and this phase is kind of annoying, but it isn't hard. The only thing that can be annoying is when he's standing in front of the screen, so you can't really have a feeling of when to jump, but you can lure him further away from the screen, so it's not a problem. Then he steals the stuff from your home, and then starts throwing these elemental attacks at you, which you can avoid if you have a villain or a Skylander of the same element, and if you keep switching, this can't even touch you. The problem arises when he starts sending shockwaves at the same time, and it becomes much harder to avoid this stuff. He also sends the good old Doom Sharks at you that are very nostalgic to me, but this actually works in your favor for now, as you can heal from the elemental attacks and sharks a lot in the first 2 phases. They only really become a problem on the 3rd phase, and that's it for the first one. He repeats those attacks until he decides to heal and get Shraptanium scissors and starts cutting you and sending even more shockwaves, which adds more challenge, especially once he starts mixing the shockwaves with older attacks. But this phase isn't too hard either, if you have a long range Skylander that is, but then he heals again and gets cool wings, and here comes the 3rd phase, which is absolute hell. Here you get these lasers that are pretty hard to avoid, and the sharks become insanely hard when combined with the shockwaves, plus Chaos takes more space because he's bigger, and the main problem here is how rarely you get an opportunity to hit him, and this phase is pretty much impossible if you don't have a long-range Skylander, and I died multiple times, even though I beat 2/3 of this fight without dying. But I eventually beat him, and that's it for this game, and we can celebrate. And hey, Hugo is back for a couple of seconds and then he's gone again. Oh, and Eon is back, even though he has done fuck all for 3 games now and is a pretty unimportant NPC now. And then we get the credits and we hear that good old
That's right. Boom!
And then Chaos takes over and he decides it is his turn to own someone else.
Seriously? I mean, come on. How much help do you think a minion called Broccoli Guy is really gonna be?
I'm like, what do you say fuck me for?
We are not done yet. It's time for additional levels, and I'll be honest, 3 of them have grown off me since my level ranking, so let's talk about them. First one is Midnight Museum, which is the introduction for the dark element, and yeah, the new elements are barely ever needed throughout the story, which is a horrible use of 2 new elements, but at least hopefully the levels are good, maybe. I don't know. Midnight Museum is about Nightshade trying to steal the Dark Eye of Invisibility. Immediately at the start, this security system is back, and once again you can completely avoid it, and it's annoying when you don't avoid it, so that's lame. But this level looks really good. I don't really get distracted by graphics that much, but I really love the dark look of the level and the purple colors, and the water looks beautiful, so that's definitely my favorite part of the level. And speaking of favorites, T-Bone is back to play Skystones, but I don't want to play them. I'm just happy to see him again. Unfortunately, the biggest problem in the level is the same as the one in the Elemental Gates, and that is pinball. I do not have a clue who thought multiple pinball sections were good for a new Elemental level, but hey, maybe that's why I'm not a game developer. And also, other levels get at least some new enemies, whereas here we fight these old and colorful enemies in a completely dark level which doesn't really fit at all. Only Hoodsickle is a fitting enemy, so that's a pretty big letdown for me. And the worst part is that there is really nothing memorable here to take away the disgusting feeling that 3 different pinball stages leave on you, and this last pinball stage is horrendous. I guess I like this area because I'm fully convinced that this is another throwback to Spyro's Adventure. It just seems very similar to Troll Warehouse, and I had to point that out, I'm sorry. Also, the light element gate had a weird glitch where I couldn't push this block, but thankfully I managed to overcome that problem without even using the double jump. The level does get saved by Nightshade's boss fight, which is a pretty solid fight, as he stands on these pillars that shoot something at you, and every time you destroy them his shadows start chasing you, and he himself sometimes shoots at you, and when his pillars get destroyed he just runs around these shadows in hopes of confusing you, but it's pretty easy to see him when the light is constantly following him. Then you repeat that 2 more times and he adds some new attacks, but it's not a problem if you're using a long-range Skylander. But at one point he just stops running, and then he takes so much damage from your hits that it feels like you're on easy difficulty and he dies. So that's a pretty weird end. It feels very unfinished, just like the rest of this game, but I still enjoyed it, and Midnight Museum gets a 7 out of 10. And if only the pinball wasn't here, it would probably get a 9. But we don't do if, buts and maybes, we do absolutes, so it's a 7. Now we have the light level, which uses almost the same intro cutscene, which feels quite lazy, and unlike Midnight Museum, this level doesn't look that good. It's the complete opposite, which makes sense, but that also means it looks much worse than Midnight Museum, and I don't like the gold and white colors being used this way, if I'm being honest. But anyways, we are supposed to unlock the tower by powering 4 crystals surrounding it, and Mags is the one leading us through this level, though she is pretty weird in this level with some of the stuff she says.
The first seal is unlocked! Yes! I mean, how would I know? It's not like I'm a scary monster trying to escape an ancient prison or anything.
As for the level, it does have new enemies, which are these light cyclopses, so I do like that, but the level is just the light crystal puzzles, which I guess makes more sense than pinball, but it still isn't great. And these bombs, man, I don't know why, but they just don't work, which is not ideal in a level with a lot of bomb throwing. And I'll be honest, these 2 additional levels aren't bad, but they are lacking interesting content, because again, there really isn't anything memorable here, apart from the ending, which is a great ending, as Mags turns out to be Luminous, who is the boss fight for this level, and while this isn't that unpredictable now that I pay attention to the dialogue, it's still something memorable, and the fight is good. He has these shields and shoots light beams at you, then he starts dropping crystals on you which you use to break the shield, and he does that during the entire fight. and then later these statues come out of nowhere and they shoot light beams at you as well, which adds solid difficulty, but it's not too hard, and then you beat him or her, and that's it. Decent level, 6 out of 10.
Sin City wasn't made for you.
We still have 2 more levels, and the first one is Nightmare Express, and this is based around Flynn's dream, where he is praised by everyone and he saves the day, and it's ironic that even in his dreams, we are the ones who save the day and not him, so that's cool. But it's another one of those Mabu versus Trolls levels, except this time we can't even make those Mabu armies, and the Mega Bombs are back. Though this time they are actually fine, so I guess that's something. But yeah, the goal of the level is to find this random trophy, and we need to help Flynn do that. So we destroy some troll tanks and regular trolls, and then Flynn gets trapped, and we have to do some puzzles in this pretty underwhelming temple. Like, they really could have made the temple more interesting, as this is probably the least interesting temple in video game history. But once we get the trophy, Flynn gets... Okay, I wasn't expecting him to get hit by a rock, but I think that makes this whole scene good. And what's even better is that Noodles is the one who threw the rock, which is also very unexpected for Noodles to be brought back out of nowhere, but I'm glad he's here. And they did change his voice actor, but it's not as big of a difference as it is with Brock. And Noodles takes the trophy and sends trolling thunder at us, which brings me on to the biggest disappointment here. The villains are Trolling Thunder, who we have fought during the story in level 14, and Lobgoblin, who is not only the light element for no reason, but is also a very common enemy throughout the entire game. But that's not even the worst part. We don't even get to fight or trap Noodles, and this has to be one of the worst decisions ever. Why bring back a bad guy in a game where you trap bad guys and we can't even trap him? I will never understand how this happened, but this video is already too long and there is still so much to say, so I should stop complaining. I feel like you already understand how idiotic this whole thing is. A troll mega tank shows up out of nowhere, so we need to do some mega bombing to destroy it. And then we hop on the Nightmare Express, which is another underwhelming area that could have been done better. Like, come on, taking over a train and fighting enemies while doing so. That could have been so much better. But instead we get these empty wagons with maybe an enemy or two, and there are absolutely no details in this level. Everything looks basic as hell, and there is absolutely nothing that stands out. And then at the end, we fight some trolls, and then Flynn gets his revenge by hitting Noodles with a rock, and that's it. This level is just disappointing, and it gets a 4 out of 10. Now it's time for the last level in the game, finally, and that is Mirror of Mystery. It has the best intro cutscene where we see Eon from the opposite day, who is called Evilon. This is one of the worst names I have ever seen. But yeah, this level is like a completely opposite world, where chaos is good and trolls are peaceful, while Mabus are the ones who attack, so that's actually a great concept for a level. Glumshanks is the one who brings us here, and he's also confused by how nice chaos is, and I must agree, this is pretty unsettling.
As much as I hate to raise my voice, I need to scare him away from this pond before the village gets attacked. If only Mablobs were here, he'd scare my little fishy friends for me.
I'm sorry, what? Like, it's a random quest, but why do you need exactly Mablobs to scare the fish? Why him? I just don't care. Anyways, Glumshanks leads us to this troll village where every troll is peaceful and is dressed up in something colorful, and I like this. We need to collect parts of troll machines so that we can fight back against the evil Mabus, and it's fun to explore this village, and while we're doing that we get to trap Chompy, which is dope. However, if you push this block, you cannot access the Chompy fight, and I knew about that, but I'm such a genius that I still managed to mess it up. Well, thankfully, I got the power of the double jump, so that isn't a problem. Once we make the troll mechs, we get this pretty horrendous part where we are in one of them and we shoot the evil Mabus, and once we finish that, Evil Flynn comes here and his boom is replaced with Doom, which is actually a pretty nice change, and he just bombs us and leaves. What he doesn't realize though is that now I can make an army of trolls, so that means that he is the one who will be doomed. And then we meet evil Persephone and we don't get to fight her, and this is where I realized that the same thing that happened in the Nightmare Express is going on here, because while I love that we trap Chompy, why on earth did they give us Mablobs and not Flynn, Persephone or Evelyn? Imagine playing as Eon, that would be such a great bonus, but nah, we get Mablobs, one of the most boring enemies I've ever seen, and we don't even fight Persephone, we just bomb her tree, which is yet another disappointing thing in these additional levels. And speaking of disappointment, at the end of this level, we don't fight Flynn, and we don't fight Evelyn. Instead, we get a turret section, which means that technically Skylanders Trap Team ends with a fucking turret section. That is so stupid. I cannot describe how much I hate the ending to this level. It's just destroying some canyons and then you shoot Flynn's ship, which falls into the mirror, and everything is over, and this level gets a 6 out of 10. And that's it! It's over. And the levels here are much better than in Swap Force, and they get a 7 out of 10 overall, which doesn't really show how good some of these are, but unfortunately some of them are disgustingly bad, so 7 out of 10 is the average. And now that we are finally done with the story, there is actually still a lot to talk about. Firstly, once you beat the game, you actually get a 4th star in every level, and to get it, you have to beat a certain time, do all quests, and don't switch, which is actually a really hard challenge. However, what makes it piss easy is the fact that you can actually use villains, and it's very easy if you use Chaos, because Chaos is the most overpowered playable character in Skylanders. You only need to use his first move, where by holding the button it will give you different elemental attacks, and you only need the magic and the undead one. The undead one deals 700 damage per hit, and the magic one completely recharges his timer, which makes him invincible. And if you're wondering where his quest is, it's in the Academy, and it's about baking a cake, which is another horrible decision. Out of all the things he could have done, he just makes a cake.
You did it! Huzzah!
Thankfully though, he's really fun to play as and you can experiment a lot with him. The tech move can even be useful for some enemies that are moving, as he deals a ton of damage at once, and his giant floating head is back. And you can shoot Doom Sharks with him, so this was definitely made for the OGs, and I love it. But with that being said, if you couldn't tell, I'm pretty bad at this game because I don't play it that much, so I decided to do the Don't Switch challenge without using a villain in order to become good at the game. I decided to use Gear Shift, and the levels without bosses are actually quite easy. I failed some of them once or twice, but I didn't struggle that much. There were only 4 levels that were causing me issues. They were Chompy Mountain, Future of Skylands, Lair of the Golden Queen, and the Ultimate Weapon. And you can probably guess why. It's the boss fight, so I just wanted to make a quick explanation on how to beat them. And if you're wondering where are Dr. Crankcase and Chef Pepperjack, come on, they aren't that hard. I beat Chef Pepperjack with Whirlwind, and Dr. Crankcase isn't even challenging, so let's just start. Chompy Mage starts by dropping eggs that send shockwaves and spawn chompies, and they'll always drop in the same place, so I recommend you stand at the bottom right and shoot as many chompies as you can so that they don't bother you, and then simply avoid the shockwaves. Then he drops 5 eggs on the left and 5 on the right, and here just focus on the shockwaves and then kill the chompies, and at the end he drops a circle of eggs on you, so just run to the other end of the area and they won't even get to you, so you can kill chompies easier. Now he turns to a big chompy and you can deal some damage by jumping and shooting before he even starts attacking, and all he does is send shockwaves, so mainly focus on dodging them and very rarely shoot at him for a bit when you feel comfortable enough, and be prepared for him to start jumping faster, but he doesn't have much health, so this will end quickly, and then he will turn to a magma giant chompy, and at the start he just jumps in one place and sends shockwaves, and I recommend standing near to him so that you can jump over all 3 shockwaves with just one jump, which makes it infinitely easier, and constantly shoot at him, and then he will jump around again, but he shouldn't have a lot of health left, so you can just attack him and that's it, done. Now Wolfgang is a lot more difficult because the phases are much longer. At the start it isn't that hard, he will slide into you and try to hit you, but the real problems are the annoying notes that follow you, so you can't stop at any point, but make sure that you're close to him once he knee slides, because if you aren't, he won't attempt to hit you, so he will send more notes, while the ones that are attacking you haven't gone away yet, so that will be hard for no reason. So you absolutely have to be somewhere close to him, and that makes this first phase easier, and don't get hit because you need health for the lasers. The second phase is by far the easiest, as you stand far from him and shoot him while he's knee sliding, and then go to the end and jump over him and then quickly go under the notes to avoid them and his dropping attack, and you just repeat that a couple of times, and then come the lasers. I honestly don't really have a lot of tips here, you just need to keep moving, and when it comes to these annoying lasers on the bottom of the screen that you need to jump over, you have to wait a bit and then jump. Don't jump immediately, as it needs to be timed perfectly so that you don't get hit. Once you see a laser pattern like this, immediately start moving to one side because they follow you, and so do these at the end, but you can prepare for them as there will be a small pause before they start coming, and because they track you down, just go to the left a bit, then to the right, and just repeat that, and then comes the absolute hell that is the end of this fight. Immediately at the start I got hit twice, so I can't really help anybody here, as I usually just focus on hitting and avoiding Wolfgang because he deals more damage than the lasers, but the lasers are anyways very hard to avoid when you're getting attacked by Wolfgang at the same time, so focus on Wolfgang and you can hope that you can tank the damage dealt by lasers. You can even use somebody like Thunderbolt, who deals a lot of damage and has a lot of health, so he's good for tanking, but I managed to beat Wolfgang in a pretty short amount of time. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. One of the best additions that make this challenge so fun is the fact that if you go through the level without switching and dying, and then you die on the boss fight, if you restart the level from the death screen, it will just restart the fight and not the entire level, and if you beat the boss, then it will still count as if you didn't switch, so that's great. Now it's time for Golden Queen. She's insanely difficult, as you all know, and by far the best Skylander to use is Gear Shift, unless you're a coward and want to just stand on the sides and avoid any damage. At the start, jump over the first shockwave and just spam attacks at her, and do that for a couple of seconds, and then she will make those golden things which you must destroy immediately, so start shooting before it's even made and it can't damage you. Now she will start moving and send a shockwave, and as soon as you jump over it, start shooting right here, because you need to destroy this golden thing before it can hit you, because if you don't, there will be a lot less space to actually deal any damage. After that, the arena becomes smaller and she sends 3 shockwaves at once, and she does this 3 times before spawning another one of these things, and once again shoot at it as much as you can while also avoiding the shockwaves that are coming back. And I know that this is hard, but you have to do it. Now you have the easiest part, where you just memorize where you move, and that's it. But then she spawns 4 of these, and you should be able to defeat one of them before they start attacking you, and then the second one, You just jump over the attack once, and that will be enough time for you to destroy it. And because their attacks reset every time one of them is destroyed, you'll have some time to attack the third one, and you only need to jump over the attacks twice if you're quick enough. And in case you get hit, save those pizzas so you can eat them. And once again for the fourth one, you just jump over the attacks twice, and that's it. Then comes another easy part where you just jump a couple of times, and now she's giant and descending shurikens and shockwaves at the same time, and you have to learn to avoid these yourself because it can be confusing because of the shurikens, which go from the right to the left, but then they switch the sides, so you can get hit if you're not paying attention to their movement. Fortunately though, these don't go on for too long, but they do happen 2 times, so there is a high chance you'll get hit. But there is one more round, and that is 6 of those golden things shooting shurikens, and here I have no tactic. I just shoot at any of them, and my main focus is on dodging. And the problem with that is when these shurikens are coming from the bottom of the screen, because you can't see them. But practice your focus in dodging and it should be good. And then the end is just running away and destroying these pillars, and that's it. This one took very long, as you can tell, but I didn't give up, which I can't say about the chaos fight. Yeah, I'm sorry, I cannot be bothered to do the chaos fight. I tried it for like 3 hours, and I came very close once and died very close to the end, but there are many things which just make me not want to attempt this anymore. First of all, the first 2 phases are actually very easy, and I'm not joking. You may get hit in them, but there are so many ways of healing that if you get hit like once or twice, you'll still be able to fully heal by the time you get to the final phase. But then the final phase is so much harder, with many attacks combining and these annoying lasers that are difficult to jump over, and the absolute worst are the sharks, which are only bad in the final phase when combined with the shockwaves, and that whole attack takes like 70% of the area, so this is probably the hardest one to avoid, and 2 hits by the sharks and you're dead. So I just don't like spending 10 minutes of kicking Chaos's ass and then I die in 2 minutes in the final phase. It's just such a long fight. I wish there was a way I could skip the first 2 phases because they are genuinely not even challenging to me. I mean, I did them without dying on my first playthrough as well, even though I hadn't fought Chaos in like a year. So because the fight takes so long, and I'm actually trying to upload this video this year, I decided I will just defeat Chaos with Chaos so I don't waste more of my time. But that doesn't mean I'll give up. One day, if you want, I'll maybe do a stream series of trying to beat Chaos with gear shift, but that will be in the future. So now, I did the don't switch challenges, and when it comes to the timers, none of them are hard because, I mean, you can skip half of the levels with the double jumping, but Future of Skylands is pretty challenging, so if you're wondering how I did it, I uploaded the entire run, so you can watch it on my channel. Now that the entire story is completed, it's time for arena battles, but before that, can somebody please explain this? If there are 22 levels with 4 stars, that would mean that 4 times 22 is 88 stars, but it says that it has 100 stars, which I do not understand at all, so if somebody can explain that, that would be great. But yeah, let's talk about Brock's arena battles. There are 6 different arenas with 4 different challenges. The first 3 are different, and then in the 4th one it's a combination of the previous 3, and as always, the arena battles are great. They are probably the most consistent thing in Skylanders, as I always enjoy them in every game. The first arena is from Phoenix Sanctuary, and this is the easiest one, and just so you know, I also did these without using villains. The first one is just getting shot from the air by pirates, which changes pretty much nothing. Then the second one is chasing this rugby ball, which speeds you up and gives you double the damage. And in the third one, enemies drop mines when they're killed, so the mines are yet another thing that returns from SSA, which is cool, but they barely deal any damage, so they're not a problem. The last one is just a combination of all of the previous ones, which is cool, but it's also not that hard, and the good thing you can do in this arena is shoot these flying ships before they can even spawn enemies, so that makes everything even easier, and once you're done, you get a new hat, and now it's time for the next one. The Monster Marsh arena is quite difficult. Firstly, you have to defeat enemies in a certain time before this bomb blows up, and the enemies can multiply, so this actually took me a couple of tries, and I did use Dreamcatcher a bit, but then I realized that she's absolutely horrible despite dealing a solid amount of damage, so I gave up on her, and once I failed with Lobstar, I realized I needed somebody who deals a lot more damage, because if you don't get rid of the enemies, they will quickly multiply, so it will take longer to kill them, and then you will fail. So I tried with Wildfire, but that didn't work either, so I decided to go with Drobot. And one thing that helps a lot in this challenge is shooting at the balloons that spawn enemies, but I didn't use it too much. My first try with Drobot was going great because he deals a lot of damage, and he is a long-range Skylander, so you shouldn't die with him, and I was very close to doing it, but I just slightly failed with the last enemy, so that sucks, but at least I had the right strategy, so I finally did it in my next try with a decent amount of time left as well. The next challenge was raising these flags, which when they are green send shockwaves that attack enemies, but when they are red, which happens when there are many enemies near the flag, it sends red shockwaves that attack you. And this one was very easy as these flags aren't that annoying here, but trust me, they will be in future. The third challenge here is actually the hardest one out of all arena battles, and that's because of the same reason I didn't like this type of challenge in Swap Force. You have to defend something in the middle of the arena while enemies lock onto those things, and this time you have to defend 3 sheep which die in like 3 hits because it's the nightmare mode. So I failed my first try with Robot, and then I got to the third stage but failed again, so I switched to Wildfire, who can stun enemies slightly and deals a lot of damage, but I still failed it on the last stage again. So I tried Magna Shift because he moves quickly, but he was by far the worst one, so I tried it again a couple of times, but I couldn't do it, and because I hate these challenges, I just used Chaos and absolutely destroyed it. So that was annoying, but thankfully Chaos exists to ruin any difficulty that this game may offer. The last one is difficult as well, but I did manage to do it on my first try, and it brings back the rugby ball, but also adds the flags and the bomb, but this time the timer is 5 minutes longer, so it's not even a challenging time. I beat it with 3 minutes left. And again, you get a hat for doing this and a ton of gold, and now it's time for the sewers. The first one is about some germs, which are carried by enemies and by eating these potatoes maybe? You get rid of the germs, and it's a really weird challenge, but it's not hard as Nightlight can just combo enemies and they can't do anything to defend themselves. The second one brings those annoying sheep back, but I absolutely destroyed this challenge on my first try, so maybe if I had used Nightlight for the previous one, I would have did that one as well, but it doesn't matter anymore. The third one is the multiplying of enemies combined with the rugby ball, so that wasn't very difficult either, but I have to say, man, Golden Queen is not good as a playable character, especially when compared to some other big bosses and considering she's such an important villain in this game. I mean, these guys did 222 damage against me, but now it's only 60, so that's very disappointing. And the last arena here, it has the germs, it has the mines and flags, so it's nothing new, and it's pretty easy, so now it's time for the next one. This one has the best arena attack with these fire cannons that cover a solid amount of the arena and can hit you out of nowhere, which ends up being a problem in some of these challenges. One of those challenges being the enemies multiplied again and the mines, but it's not hard, and the second one is easy as well, as it's those air pirates again, but the next one is a one-hit challenge, which is great. Though it's not really a one-hit challenge, as you get a shield that protects you until you get hit, which kinda fucks up the entire point of the challenge, but it's not the end of the world, and it's still pretty difficult, and these platforms on the sides are helpful in some situations with big and slow enemies. And then the last challenge brings back the flags, and you have the one-hit challenge for 1 round, so it's fun, but I beat it on my first try, so now we are going to the Golden Desert. The first two are quite simple. You have the rugby ball and the air pirates and the germs and the multiplying, but my goodness, the third one is so hard. The flags are back, and while until now they've caused me no trouble, they are so annoying here as there are so many tanky enemies that take long to kill, so they have enough time to raise the flags and combine the random flag shockwaves with the blastertrons, which I've already complained about, and here they got you in a 2v1, so it's hard to get rid of them, and by the time you do that, you're you're only starting the third stage, which has another flag, so now it's even harder, except you don't have any health anymore. So as always, once I inevitably failed the challenge with Wildfire, because God forbid you're using a close-range Skylander in this game, I switched to Drobot. But even though he's a long-range Skylander, that doesn't really help with the Blastertrons, so I found myself struggling again, and I died a couple of times, and sometimes it was pretty undeserving, and I hate how sometimes when you jump while Drobot is flying, he just falls down instead of jumping, which means that I get hit by these stupid shockwaves, and I think this is the arena that took me the longest, but I started becoming better at the Blastertron section. But that didn't make the final stage any easier, and on the run I beat this challenge. I got pretty lucky with this part, but with all the times I didn't get lucky, I couldn't care in the slightest. I was just glad that it was finally over. The last arena is hard as well, with the timer coming back, and there are so many grave clobbers thrown at you, and they multiply, and there are other difficult enemies, but there are no Blastertrons, so I did it on my first try. And even though this is the last arena battle in the story, you can actually buy the last arena in Arc's shop, and that's like the grand finale of arena battles, with insanely tough challenges. But I'll be honest, I only died once at the start of the first challenge, and then I did everything else without dying, so I'm quite happy with that, and I hope that that means that I'm finally good at this game, though I did use Drobot, so that made everything much easier, but hey, it still counts. The first challenge here is just fire all over the place, and it's easy. The second one throws some enemies that are very tough to fight, and they kinda overshadow the gimmick here, which is cannonballs flying at you and deflecting off of the bouncy things. The third one has these lasers that are moving all the time, and the reason they are difficult isn't the damage they deal. It's actually because they can stun you a bit, which leaves you pretty vulnerable to the attacks from the enemies nearby, but these lasers do feel kinda nostalgic, because they remind me of the ones from Creepy Citadel, and fun fact, they actually did more damage, even though there was not even a hard mode in Spyro's Adventure. And the last fight is against pretty much everything you fought in these arenas, and it's very challenging, but as I said, I beat it on my first try, and you can actually probably get 40,000 gold just from beating this arena once, as the Chomp chests drop a lot of gold, and you get 25,000 gold for beating it. So it's worth it, but that's it for the arena battles. I really enjoyed going through them as always, but now it's time for the last thing that's needed for the collection of stars, and that's Chaos's Doom challenges. These are very similar to arena battles, but the difference is you can die. So it's more relaxing and better for leveling up, as it consists of 100 waves of fighting enemies. Obviously, you don't need to do all 100 at once, because that would be unbearable, but you have different stages that slowly get more waves, and there are some things here that you should remember. Apart from Chaos returning to his old annoying self by talking in an unskippable cutscene on the start of every stage, there is this box in each wave that you're like supposed to protect, but realistically the box is impossible to save in 90% of the waves on Nightmare mode, because enemies come from multiple sides, so while you're fighting one side, the other side obliterates the box in like 2 hits, so there is no point in even trying, just survive. But once the box is destroyed, you get a mini boss fight against a bigger regular enemy, so it's nothing special, but it's also nothing hard. They just have more health and deal more damage. You also have these towers, which you can only make if you have the required element, and they are probably the most fun part of the entire thing, as you can save them while they level up and start dealing more damage. So I usually tend to defend the towers instead of the boxes, and I'm absolutely heartbroken every time a tower dies. Arenas also change every 3 stages, and they have certain attacks, and in the last one you get this Chaos meter, which when filled gives 1 or 2 waves full of grave clobbers and those other Egyptian guys, so that adds some challenge, but you can still die as many times as you want, so that doesn't really matter that much. Now that I've said all of that, just think about this. I just beat 72 waves, and now I'm supposed to beat another 100 waves in a row. That's 172 waves of just fighting, and at least the first 72 required actual focus and skill. These 100 waves are literally impossible to fail, so because of all of that, and because I'd like this video to be done anytime soon, I decided to do the waves with Chaos. So that just removes any difficulty whatsoever, as you just destroy enemies, and that's pretty much it. we got the max Portal Master rank and all 180 stars, but there are still more things to do. First of all, and this will be very short, but you remember those rap battle button mash minigames? Yeah, they get harder as you unlock new NPCs to battle, but you don't get anything for doing them. You only get these medals if you do those short solo segments where you have to button mash for your life pretty much, and this was surprisingly difficult. I don't know why they made it this hard, but it is honestly hard. I'm not joking. I was literally hitting my controller to do them, and I still only barely managed to do them, and it's the same solo for all 6 of these, so you have to do it multiple times, so my hands were genuinely hurting after doing all of them, but it didn't take long, only around 30 minutes I'd say, once I understood what I was supposed to do, and now there is only one thing left to do. For some reason in this game, there is no shop that lets you buy hats from older games. Hatterson gives you like 20 of them and that's it, but I still need to get like 200 other hats. And the way you get them is by placing a Skylander with a hat on, and you get a legacy hat, meaning it's unlocked. The problem here is that I obviously need to swap between Swap Force and Trap Team, but that would mean constantly changing games, so that would take forever. So we are going to use the Sky Reader. I don't know what it's called, but I'll leave a link to this video. It's a guide on how to use it, but in the way that I did it, once you reconnect the portal, the Skylander still has the old hat, so you take him off the portal and bring him back, and then you get the new hat. And now you just need to do this another 200 times, and this took me 2.5 hours. Yes, 2.5 hours of changing hats. This is definitely one of the lowest points in my life, and I even managed to ruin a lot of my Skylanders because this app does mess up your Skylanders, so you probably shouldn't use your best Skylander when doing this, but yeah, I did it, and now the game is fully completed. Alright, just like last time, we got this part where I show you the save file, I guess. That's pretty much it, so yeah, here you go, proof I've done everything. First of all villains are trapped, all quests are done. Pretty simple to show. Max Portal Master rank, all 100 stars on the story mode, all 30 stars in arena battles, and all 50 stars on Chaos's Doom challenges, that's right. As you can tell, I've got all hats. I've already explained that it took way too long, and I don't like it. I don't know why they did that, but it's fine. I guess they didn't expect anybody to be crazy enough to want all of the hats. And for some reason it says 0 to 0. Okay, now it's fixed. But yeah, I got all 244 hats, and I have all of the trinkets. I think there are 33 of them. And yeah, that's it. That's pretty much the save file. It's nightmare mode. I don't know why it wouldn't be. And yeah, here you go, 50 stars, 100 stars, and 30 stars. And yeah, now I have 2 of them on nightmare mode. That's pretty cool. So that's it. I honestly really enjoyed playing for this game, but it has so many issues that aren't like frustrating or annoying like the issues in Swap Force. The only annoying issues are the quests, and something I haven't mentioned, but there is actually no PvP mode in this game, and I have never understood why. Like, yeah, Skylanders are unbalanced, but that isn't a big enough of a deal to remove the entire PvP mode from the game. At least let me have it. It's seriously mind-boggling to me why they haven't put it in this game. It's actually shocking, but outside of that, it's just some issues that don't ruin the game for me, but I wish they were better, like the new elements or the Chaos Doom challenges, and because of that, Skylanders Trap Team gets a 7 out of 10. I think it's pretty deserved, and with that being said, let me ask this question. Is Skylanders Trap Team really that hard? Yes. Yes, it is. I mean, have you even watched the video? I got my ass kicked in like half of these levels. But that isn't actually the real question. The real question, as you can tell by the title of the video, is completing Skylanders Trap Team really that hard? It isn't. Yes, I've complained about many things, but realistically you can beat the game on easy mode, trap chaos, and then destroy everything with chaos on nightmare mode. So when you think about it, this is probably the easiest game to complete after Skylanders Pirate's Adventure, because if you abuse chaos, literally the only difficult thing in the game is the rap battles and unlocking hats, and that isn't even a joke. They really shouldn't have made chaos that overpowered, but yeah, keep that information in mind the next time you complain about this game. Also, I haven't really mentioned the glitches because everybody knows about them, but I have a ton of gameplay now, so I will make a compilation of the most interesting glitches I came across soon. But anyways, that's it from me now. It's time to rest. Goodbye.